Okay, today is May 14th, 2012. I'm here with Pamela Mann about her military service for the West Virginia Veterans Legacy Project. Could you please give me your full name as it is recorded on your birth certificate?
On my birth certificate, it's Pamela Jean Sauter. But I'm married, so now it's Pamela Jean Sauter Mann.
Do you currently or have you ever had a nickname?
Pam.
Did you acquire any particular nicknames during the military service?
Nope, not really.
Where were you born and raised?
I was born in Prince George's County, Maryland, which is also where I was raised.
Alright. What did your parents do for a living? Were either of them or any other members of your close family involved in the military?
Oh, yes. My dad, the last job he had before he retired, he worked for Wonder Bread.
Oh.
And he served in the Army Air Corps until it became the Air Force, and then he served in the Air Force. And he was actually in there until after I was born in 1958. I think he actually got out in 1959. My oldest brother, retired from the Navy after 26 years. And my my other brother, who's still older than me, did 4 years in the Army.
Okay.
Okay.
Where did you attend school?
I attended school at Northwestern High School in Hyattsville, Maryland, Park College, while I was in the military. And I'm currently in Mount West Community and Technical College, which is part of Marshall University at the moment. But I'll be graduating from Northern Kentucky University in a couple of years, I hope.
Oh, great. What are you studying in college?
Public Library Technology. It's a new name for librarian, or library science.
Alright. What was your childhood like?
Oh, my. Well, there were 7 kids in my family. Oh, my. Shoot.
And we're back.
Okay. Now it's going to be 2 different videos.
Yeah.
Okay.
What was your childhood like?
All right. I grew up in a house with 7 kids, and both my parents worked. It was chaotic. 7 kids in the house is going to be chaotic. My mom had a lot of issues. She was an alcoholic, and she had some drug issues. But my dad was very supportive, and he was, even though he worked 2 jobs, he was still there to put us to bed and say our prayers and do things with us. And that's a tough question. It was difficult. It was a difficult childhood. My oldest brother, that's why my oldest brother ended up in the Navy, because he wanted to get out of the house. And then my other brother left home to join the Army, and then my oldest sister left home when she was 17. My twin sister left home when she was 14. I managed just to get out until I was about 16. And then I had a baby, dropped out of high school. Got my GED, though. There was a program in Maryland where I was able to get my GED. Got married way too young at 18. Just really shortly. I was 18 January, got married in May of that year. Proceeded to have 3 children by the time I was 21. And I was divorced by 24.
Mm. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say, and then remarried now for 26 years to my second husband.
Were there any specific events during your childhood that you would like to describe that maybe led to you wanting to serve in the military?
Well, it wasn't exactly my childhood. What led me to want to serve in the military was getting divorced. And having gone from being a kid at home to being a wife and not really doing anything to improve myself. So I wanted to, once I was divorced and my husband ended up getting custody of the kids because my finances weren't as good as his, and that was fairly typical for that time. I wanted to do something better to show my 3 daughters. At the time I just had 3 daughters. To show them that you can make yourself better even under the most extreme circumstances, so I joined the military.
Have you remained connected to the area where you were raised?
A little bit, just a little bit. I'm pretty much, I've been in West Virginia for 17 years, and this is home. This is where I'm at. This is where I'm more connected to than I was ever to Maryland. I have family there, so I go home and visit family. That's about it.
Oh, okay. Now, did you feel the need to enlist in the military, or were you drafted?
Well,
or was there a draft?
There wasn't a draft. I actually started to enlist when my oldest daughter was less than a year old. The only things that kept, and that was the last year of Vietnam. The only things that kept me from enlisting were that I would have had to give up custody of my daughter at the time. I was told by the recruiter that I would have had to sign custody over to someone else to get in, because I couldn't have a child and be in there. And the GED kind of stood in my way at the time. So, and that was probably a good thing, because when I finally did get in, it was at a time when I was more able to. It was because it was what I wanted to do, not what I felt I had to do. And at the earlier time, I felt like I had to join the military to prove something.
Yeah.
And I really didn't. The second time, I really didn't feel like I had to prove anything. I just wanted to show something, which is totally different.
Yeah.
You know.
Were you permitted to pursue the branch of service that you wanted?
Not initially. Nope. I was not. I wanted to go active duty in the Navy right from the get-go, and they would not talk to me even a little bit, which upset my poor brother, who was a recruiter at the time. I had a phenomenal, the ASVAB test. I had a AFQT, I think that's a long time ago. I had like a 93% on my ASVABs, and he wanted me in there so bad. But because I had a GED at the time, they would not take me. Even though they took some guy that got like a 43 on his. They didn't take me because I had a GED. But they took him because he had a high school diploma and he was a guy. So.
A little bit of favoritism.
Little discrimination there.
Discrimination.
Yep. Their loss.
Did any other people influence your decision on joining the military?
Well, sort of. I was dating a guy at the time that was in the Army, and he really enjoyed it, so he kind of encouraged me to join. Oh, and by the way, I ended up going in the Army initially, even though I ended up in the Navy later.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Where did you attend your basic training at?
Fort Dix, New Jersey, the armpit of the world, of the United States. In August, it was horrible. Very hot, very muggy, and it rained a lot. So.
Doesn't sound too fun.
Yeah.
How did you feel about your basic training?
At the time, I really liked basic training overall. By the time I was done with it, I was frustrated. But I was a better person, and I feel like I went in expecting to just not be scared, which I was, and not do as well as I did. But I pushed myself. I feel like it allowed me to push myself to be better than I am, or I was. And I think I came out like second in my platoon when we graduated. Kicked butt when we were on the firing range. I was like top marksman. So, and I feel like it was a good experience, and not one I would not have changed. I would have gone again. I'd go now. Well, maybe not. I wouldn't do as well. But yeah, it's one I definitely was glad I did.
What was your first memorable assignment after basic training?
First memorable assignment after basic training. Well, my days in the Army, I was actually in the Army Reserve to start, so there wasn't a whole lot memorable about it. I went to Fort Belvoir, Virginia for my AIT, which was, I might as well just have been living on in a townhouse. I mean, the barracks were kind of scuzzy, but I actually ended up being able to live at home during AIT because I lived so close to the base. So I didn't really get get out there and do anything out of the ordinary. It was just like another job.
Yeah.
Let me think. My first memorable assignment didn't happen until after I had spent my 3 years in the Army, gotten out, and then gone in the Navy, because they didn't want to train me to do anything else when they did away with my MOS.
Wow.
So I went in the Navy, and they put me in an airframe shop at Andrews Air Force Base at the Naval Air Station there, working on P-3s. So that was pretty memorable. And my most memorable memory of that was towing a P3 into a hangar, which was kind of cool. And working with a lot of men that really didn't like women in the airframe shop.
Ah.
So, okay.
Sounds like it could have been interesting.
It was interesting.
How long were you in the military?
Okay. 3 years in the Army, Reserve. And then I did 2 years in Navy Reserve, and then 6 years active duty in the Navy. Mm-hmm. And then back to the Navy Reserve. So that's 3, 6, 12. And then 5 more years Reserve. Though a good portion of that last 5 was IRR.
In the Navy still? In
the Navy, yeah. And I got out of the military IRR.
Did you know how long you were going to stay in the military when you first joined?
Nope. I had thought to make it a career, but I wasn't sure. I was kind of going enlistment to enlistment. So.
What was your opinion of your officers?
Let's see. Boot camp officers, I had a few I liked. There was a couple that were horrible. We had one that actually ended up getting court-martialed for abusing the trainees. He had one girl he ended up paralyzing for life because he forced her to do physical training while she was her arm was damaged, and she ended up having her arm paralyzed. And he got court-martialed for that. The majority of the officers that I worked with were pretty good. I had a couple that weren't so great. I had a female commander when I was in the Navy that was really, she was a female chauvinist. Yeah. I had a poster that I thought was a wonderful testament to how far women have come in the military. Mm-hmm. It was the one where it says, "Gee, I wish I were a man. I'd join the Navy." And I had that hanging up on my wall in my office, and she made me take it down. She thought it was she thought it was I guess discriminatory. I thought it was, like I said, it showed how far we'd come, and how, you know, I was the systems administrator for the entire Navy Recruiting District, Washington, and I wasn't a man. So wow. To me, it just showed, you know, it was a good poster. I still have it. It's hanging in my den. Or it was hanging in my office, but I'm going to hang it back up when I rearrange my rooms.
What was your opinion of the other branches of the military?
Well, I remember when I was in the Army, driving through the Navy bases, screaming, well, you don't want to hear this, a joke, something about having 8 legs, and, well, never mind. When I was in the Army, I thought the Navy was kind of a squishy job, and that they didn't do much. And then I joined the Navy and found out how much they actually really did. I've always been very respectful of Marines and Air Force, because my dad was Air Force. And now I appreciate all branches, because every single branch is important, and every single branch has a job to do, and they're all necessary. So.
What were your jobs in the military?
Okay, I had a long list of jobs in the military. I did a little bit of everything. After I came out of AIT, I was they called it a lithographer, but I was actually an offset press operator, and I worked on the big, giant three-color web presses. Worked on Heidelberg presses. I really enjoyed that job. That was a lot of fun. A lot of work, really hard work. Some of that stuff was heavy. And then when I went in the Navy, I worked, like I said, on P3s. I did some maintenance, and mostly maintenance, because I worked in the airframe shop. I also did, I worked for recruiting, and I did recruiting. I worked in a recruiting station. My first job for that was the systems administrator for Navy Recruiting District, Washington. And I worked in their leads office, which is where they got leads, where we would recruit people from high schools and things like that, and we'd maintain mailing lists and send out mailings concerning the Navy, trying to get people to join. And then I went down to Richmond to work in their leads office, and I did the same thing, and then I ended up working on presses. So it all kind of tied in together. And then after I got off active duty, I went to a reserve unit, and they made me a quartermaster. Or they tried to make me a quartermaster. It didn't work very well. I can barely drive down the street and find my way, and they wanted me to tell ships where to go. So, my favorite job, did you ask me that already, what my favorite job was?
I have not, but you can tell us.
Oh, okay. My favorite job in the military was working for the Military Sealift Command. That was very interesting. Another one of those ones where they were trying to teach me how to make ships go where they needed to go. The Military Sealift Command worked with civilian container ships, or the part I worked in, we worked with civilian container ships during Desert Storm, which was really interesting, to get supplies around the world where they needed to be. And that was really interesting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you describe of the jobs that you just listed? Could you describe some of the duties that you were responsible for?
Well, that was
on
one
these
of
jobs.
them. Maintaining the computers for the command, working with working at the MSC on the. It was kind of an interesting. It was early computers. I mean, it was before internet, so we would have, you'd have to like take the phone, dial the number, put the phone on this little cradle so it could hook up to the big screen so you could see where everything was and everything. It was really interesting. And then we'd have to decide which ships went where and what went on the ships and how they would go on the ships and how things would be organized so that they could be most efficiently packed into the ship to get to where they needed to go. That was one of them. In the airframe shop at Andrews, I did some maintenance. I did fuel changing, which I hated. I did a little bit of working with the planes, getting them into the hangar, you know, with the lights and things like that. FOD walk downs, you don't even want to know about FOD walk downs. They're horrible. I worked. Where else did I work? I worked down in Norfolk a little bit at their computer center down there at the CIMA in Norfolk. I can't tell you what I did there. That was classified. Worked with computers. That's all I can say. And that's about it, I guess. Oh, and recruiting. I worked in recruiting.
How did you feel about these jobs?
I loved them all.
Or the duties that were part of them?
I loved them all. There wasn't a single job I didn't like doing. I like doing different things, so it was really great to be able to do different things and to be trained outside of my rate or my MOS, depending on which branch of service I was in.
Okay.
And they had no problems doing that. So.
Let's see here. Were you deployed?
I was never deployed overseas. I was deployed when I was at MSC, Military Sealift Command. I filled in for the folks that were deployed overseas, and that's how I ended up in that particular job.
Okay. Was there a different view of women where you were posted at?
Well, it depends on which duty station I was at. At the reserve centers, not really. They were pretty evenly, you know, people were fine whether you're male or female. And there was a lot of camaraderie and people worked together. When I was at the Naval Air Station, there was definitely a difference between men and women. I had the airframe shop, I was the only woman while I was there, and I was not at all appreciated. They did not think women belonged. Most of the men there didn't think the women belonged there, though my chief was really good and my commander was really good and a couple of the other people really nice. One very memorable incident there was I forgot to bring my boots one morning, and my husband had dropped me off, so I had to have somebody take me home to get my boots. And this guy that was like a 90-year-old seaman, he wasn't really that old, he just acted like it. He was probably in his 60s and he was still a seaman because he had been busted so many times. I don't know why they kept him. He was a reservist. He was horrible. He spent the whole time driving on the trip home saying, you know, you bitches don't belong in the military, you belong at home raising babies, and it was pretty awful. He got in trouble for that. I did not mind reporting that. When I usually let things just kind of roll off, that was a little much.
Yeah.
I couldn't let that one go. And I also lost out on a job because I was not a man. I had applied to go to Corpsman School in Fort Sam, Houston, Texas, and I had changed my whole life. I had just been married in April. I was supposed to leave in October. I had canceled some surgery I'd scheduled. I quit my job. I just rearranged my entire life, and the week before I was supposed to leave, I went to pick my orders up, and I went in there, and they said, "Oh man, we're sorry about this. This was a mail billet." You can't go. So I lost out on that one.
Great.
But again, that was probably for the best. It's kind of my family. With my family life, that kind of worked out because that gave me the opportunity to pursue adopting a child, which we did.
Did any problems ever arise because of there being women around in the work area?
Yeah. Again, we keep going back to the airframe shop. Yes, there were lots of problems there. It didn't keep me from doing my job. Like I said, I had supportive. My commanders were supportive. My chiefs were supportive. It was just some of the guys in the shop that were not very supportive. So that was a little bit of a problem. Other than that, not too much. I do remember one case when I was sent down to SEMA for some training in Norfolk, and they put me in a barracks, and I walked into the barracks and felt like I was in a maternity ward because there was like 20 pregnant women in there. It turned out that there was a ship that was getting ready to deploy, and all these women got pregnant so they wouldn't have to deploy. And they're not allowed to go. They're not allowed to deploy if they're pregnant, or they weren't. I don't know how they do that now. It was very strange.
Did you serve with any other West Virginians during your time?
Let me see. I don't remember if I did in boot. I don't think there was anybody in boot camp from West Virginia. I did have one when I was in one of my training, not my training, my reserve, not reserve either, my recruiting assignments. Yeah, I got a little tongue-tied there. When I was down in Richmond, there was a young man there from West Virginia, now that I think about it.
Oh, okay.
So.
What did you do during your downtime, your relaxation times during...
When I was on active duty?
When you were on active duty, yes.
Well, early on, before I had a house full of kids and husband and everything, we'd go out in the evenings, we'd go to bars, we'd go camping or hiking or biking or something to get out and burn off energy.
Okay.
Mostly we went camping, and then, like I said, in the evenings we'd go out and party a bit, go dancing and stuff. And then after I had kids, after I got married, I'd go home and take care of my kids.
What was it like when you left the military service?
Well, I kind of gradually left it. When I got off of active duty, it was a bit of a change. I really liked being active duty, and so it was kind of hard adjusting to military life and not having to wear the same clothes every day and not having somebody be able to order me and not being able to talk back. Well, I don't talk back, but it was a bit of an adjustment. And I remember coming out of boot camp and having to totally adjust my vocabulary again to my poor parents, and having to just kind of train myself to be a little less brash than I was when I first came out.
Were you able to make use of the GI Bill?
No. That is a very sore spot for me. I extended my enlistment in order to get the new GI Bill. That was the new GI Bill at the time. I did 4 more years and got to the end of that. And again, they said, whoops, sorry, you signed the wrong one. Or we told you the wrong one, you don't get the GI Bill. So I didn't get it.
Have you made use of any VA services?
Yes, I got a VA loan for our first house, which unfortunately we lost when my husband got, he lost his job. That's a long, ugly story. We won't go there. But we ended up losing that house, which we at the time had as a rental, plus our other house. So we had to default on the VA loan, which means nothing else.
Would you do anything differently? Would you have stayed in the military longer, or would you have left sooner?
I would have stayed in longer. I would have retired from the Navy if I could have, but I didn't.
So you would have liked to have made a career out of it?
I really would have liked to have made a career out of it, but there were no duty stations close by, and we had just moved. We moved to West Virginia, and I had a very small son at the time. It'd be you. And I didn't want to leave him. I just decided it was time to get out, so I did.
Is there any advice that you would like to give to individuals that are currently serving our country, or for young people who are considering maybe joining the military?
For the ones that are currently in, take advantage of it and stay in. It's the best job you're going to get. It's the most, steady job you're going to get. It's not one you have to worry about getting laid off from. The benefits are good. The pay is I thought was very good, and it's just the training is amazing, and it's just worth staying in. For young people maybe considering going in, think really hard. It is a very good opportunity for a lot of people. If you're only going in because you've got a boyfriend that's going in or a girlfriend that's going in, it's probably not a good idea. If you're going in because you know what you want to do, and then the military is something that you've thought about and is something that you feel will do you some good, then by all means go in. It is worth it. Okay. I would not recommend getting married early on. Do your training, do your advanced training, get in a duty station, and get settled before you even think about a long-term relationship like that.
Is there anything else that you would like to add?
Not that I can think of. Not right off the top of my head. That's pretty much it.
Well, thank you for doing this interview.
You're welcome.
It was very nice.
Thank you for interviewing me.
And thank you for serving.
Okay, thank you.